Okay, now I'm going to paint a stormy ocean scene, and I want it to look epic with the dark stormy sky and a giant wave crashing here. So I'm going to start by sketching it out, and the white water is going to be up on top of this, but not too much, because waves just keep on traveling and traveling out in the deep sea. They're not breaking on a shallow shoreline, so this is going to be just this wall of water. Now I'll just make some curved lines to represent the shape. This is just showing me the shape of my wave. This is not going to be part of the picture. I just want to start visualizing my perspective. Let's put a wave. This is kind of coming up in here, and we have another wave right there. That'll be kind of cool. The whole picture is just tilting. Remember how I have my smile shapes at the base of the wave where it swoops out? So I can kind of plan that shape that I showed you in the earlier lessons. Now I want to have the effect of waves upon waves. So this will be kind of one mound of waves. It all just drops off back there. And the way I'm going to make that look is by putting waves directly behind. Boom. A sudden change where there's a layer behind a layer. But see, what's cool is that is going to give a reference point to how huge this guy is over here, because even though these are hills made of waves, they're just little compared to this big wall. Now these two colors that you see here are my dark shadow color that I'm going to use for the stormy clouds, and this will be the sky kind of popping through. And this one is made from blue, red, black, and white. So I know I'm going to get asked what blue, what red, what black, what white. It does not matter. Just mix blue, red, black, white, and get some kind of a dirty grayish dark blue. You're golden. It's going to work. And then use the same blue plus white for this sky color. So I'm not looking for real bright and pure colors on this one, because I want a dark and stormy look. And we've all seen a million different photographs that have all kinds of different hues in the sky. So it's the way I put these colors together that matters, not the exact mix of the color. Now, I want to choose my brush wisely. I have this big area and I have fast drying paint. So I'm going to use a big brush. If you have a little painting, you don't need a real big brush. You want to use something that's going to allow you to get a lot done fast. And I'm not trying to do a detailed masterpiece. So I've got a big brush to keep me away from getting too caught up in little details and keep my progress moving quickly. I'm going to get it wet, and then I'm going to spin it out. Don't want to go too crazy because this is a smaller bucket now and it'll flick over the edges. I always do this to get the excess water out of it, but it leaves the brush more moist, and so it doesn't, a real dry brush the paint can dry fast in that brush and speed my dry time on my project. So this just buys me a little bit of time having that moist brush. And then another trick that I can do, if I know the area that I'm going to be working on a painting, and this is all for fast drying acrylic latex paint. This is the same thing I would paint a wall with. If you're using oil, then all these techniques will definitely still work, but you don't need to do all this stuff to slow down the dry time, because oil is fantastic for staying wet and giving you time and blending. But this is water-based, so this is how I do it. This is just water, and now the surface is just moist and cooled down, and the temperature and the moisture level affect the dry time. So you want to work in an area that is as cool and humid as possible for you to still enjoy your job. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my dark blue and I'm going to start putting it on in different areas. I'm not going to spread it out. I'm just going to put it on so that I know it's enough to cover this whole area. So you can kind of estimate, based on the size of your picture, how much it's going to take to get everything covered. It's kind of fun being all messy like this. I can see a little booger in the paint right there. Let's say a couple more. And I've added water to this paint. You can see it starting to drip. That's because I added some water to also make it not dry too quickly on me. Let's put some there, and so what would you say that is? Maybe like, maybe blue to gray. I have 30–40% covered with these big blobs of this blue. I'm gonna see how well that works for me. Now, I'm gonna get the light color. So, get a little bit more of this out of my brush. This is just real thin, so that's not gonna go very far. I want more of the light color near the bottom here. Typically the horizon is where more of the light color of the sky is. Not always. But it'll be cool because if I have more of the light color down here, I'm gonna have the look of the cloud hanging over everything. So I'm just gonna put patches of light. Now there are probably a lot of other ways to get a very detailed and realistic looking sky. But like I said, this is the fast way. And who knows? Maybe it'll look pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to blend the dark color upward and the light color downward for the most part. So wherever I come to a dark patch, I'm not going to drag it down real far. I'm going to make it go upward, like this. Wherever I come to a light patch, I'm going to pull that downward. See? So I follow this pattern. This dark one, go upward, upward. Now I don't want it to mix too much on me. So after I get them to run together, okay, light one downward, dark upward. I just want to distribute it right now. There we go. Put that there. I don't want to do real long brush strokes because I want to keep these two colors separate from each other as much as I can. I mean, who even knows what this is going to look like? This is so interesting, just seeing what's going to happen. Okay, get that. And down here, things are going to be a lot more horizontal because this is further out toward the horizon, so the perspective scrunches everything. So I'm just going to start going back and forth here. Maybe instead of cleaning this brush, I'll just switch to another brush. I have this clean one. So let's find my light colors, blend those downward, okay? Dark colors upward, light color downward. What'll happen is it's going to start to look like clouds sagging, rain clouds just sagging down. They're real heavy, stormy clouds. And so I'm just looking for dark patches to blend upward. Here's a light area, so ooh, look how dry that is. Only some of it is still blendable. But that's okay, I planned on that happening. There's still plenty of paint to work with. That dark color up like that. You know what I need to do is, since I put probably too much paint on this, I just need a place to get rid of paint, so I'm just going to do that right there. Let's see what happens if I blend some of this. Dark color, I want to blend that upward. I don't want to see any dark edges that look like mountains. I want to see all my dark edges look like sags, like this right here. Get rid of some paint. You know where else I can get rid of some paint is right here. All right, let's see what happens if I start doing some softer blending across areas like this. Now I'm grabbing light areas and pulling them down, at least trying. Because here's a darker area, so I'll see if I can pull that upward. Just go like this. It's okay if they bleed together, that's going to be fine. Here's a light color, I can bring that downward. Let's get rid of some paint. Now as I get lower in this picture, whew, my arm's getting tired. It's a lot of movement. Whew. Now I might have just a million of these little dark light shapes, or maybe I just have a couple. I'm kind of letting chance decide on this one. All right, now here I want to get more horizontal. I'm going to do the same thing. Dark colors blend upward, light downward. This is mostly light here, so I'll just see what happens if I just go back and forth. Blend it. Look how it's skipping right there because it's getting too dry. Too dry to be worked. But that's okay because there's still areas that are real wet and I can pull those over. Get rid of some of that paint. The higher I get in the picture, the more I do these swooping smile shapes. You know, but not as much when I get down low. Blend that dark color upward. Blend this light color downward. And when I blend the light color downward, you can see I kind of, like the letter A, I open it up like that. See, I'm looking for these dark shapes and just trying to smooth them out. Look, if I pull some of this light color up in here, I can make a little gap in the clouds, blend it downward. I kind of like the way it looks to have this one light spot up in here, so I'm going to see if I can get away with overworking it just a little bit right here. Sometimes shapes emerge that I just like, so I think, oh, I gotta just run with that a little bit. I like that stormy sky. And I can always add more details later if I really want to, but it gets the effect. I have the light color down here fading off into the horizon, and then it looks like a heavy wave overhanging. I think I want to tilt the horizon a little bit though. That'll be kind of cool. So it's not too late to add on a little bit down here. Just a little bit, so that it looks like looks like this wave is just really just lifting up everything, you know. I like the way this little strip looks like a shadow right here, bottom edge of a cloud. I can just dip the edge of my brush in that dark paint and add those two. Now watch, this is just a little bonus. Here's something fun I can do with water-based paints. Get my hand nice and wet, and I can do some blending by smearing. This is where the paint is still actually workable. It maybe has the consistency of clay, so it requires more than the weight of the bristles on the brush to move it around, but if you reduce the friction on your fingers, you can smear it around pretty well. Some of it really is dry, and I shouldn't ruin it. See, but this is fun. I can take this light area and drag it down a little more. I mean, why not? To start on these waves, I need two colors. Just like in the earlier lesson, I need a color for the dark part of the water and the part that is lighting up and is greener. So this one is going to be just blue and black, nothing else, except for whatever is in the bristles of this brush. So this blue would be an equivalent to a phthalo blue. If you're working with artist tubes, this would be like a phthalo blue. It's a lot lighter when it's wet. You can see a lot of blue in there, but when this dries, you can see how dark on the edge of this little bucket it is. But that is with black mixed in with it also. It's not that this isn't dark enough when I paint it on, but when I lighten it with white, it gets very blue. And I don't want this really dark water to have that rich blue color. So that's what the black is going to do, is make it not quite so blue when I add white to it. I'll show you what I mean. See, I put it on there. You can see how black that looks. Then when I get some white, and this is even with the black mixed into it, you can see how bright the color gets. And I don't want a bright blue, so this is toned down quite a bit right there. Let's see what happens if I just dump a bunch of blue into this. This is the bright turquoise color that I was using for the earlier lesson. And the way I made that real rich turquoise color is with some phthalo green. So we have phthalo blue, we have phthalo green. It's in this Cal tint tube. They have pretty much the exact same tint that they tint these gallons with at the paint store also. But these are universal colorants. You can put them in oil or water-based. I always use them for my water-based paints. So my technique is going to be putting the light color on. So this right here is the lighter color, and of course it has my dark color mixed in with it. And that's okay. They're going to mix together all over the place. And I didn't make this sketch for no reason. I want to stick with that. So I'm going to overlap this a little. Actually, I'm going to make this whole wave all the way up into the trough here. The trough being that backside of the wave dipping down into the low point. That's what I'm talking about when I say that. Okay. Light color. And rather than get out the little brush and do all of these tiny little waves, I'm going to see if I can just do it with this big brush. Now I'm going to use a real loose technique because I don't want this picture to be about the real refined details. I'm going to see if I can get a really good look without killing myself on the details. Okay, this is I have the face of the wave here, so these are going to have more of an angle on them, like this. They're going to thin out. I'm going to have less of these. Maybe I don't have to do that smiley shape. Maybe I can just... See, there's another one up here, another edge to this wave. Right here, just where I sketched it out. So remember, I want this brightest part of this wave to be up here at the top. The front top. There. And this is where it'll be real dark down here. You see this? I wanted it to look like it had kind of a double peak on it. A lot of times I go over one stroke multiple times to get it to be softer. You know, you got to find your own comfort zone and techniques that you like to use. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to come back over it with the wet on dry technique. So I'm not going to get too caught up in refining the look of these because they're going to kind of get hidden underneath the reflection color that I'll be putting on it. Okay, more of this one. See if I can speed up a little bit here. So this dark that I'm making is not necessarily a reflection. It's just where the light is not shining through this water. Now a lot of times these little waves have kind of a diamond, like a crisscross pattern to them. So if I have kind of a square shape to each one, then they'll kind of look like they're connecting corner to corner if I do it like this. A lot of times that's a fun way to get real natural looking water patterns. And I would say the ideal place to use that is here in the foreground where you're looking more straight at the surface. I wouldn't want to use that real checkered look back in here. Back in here I'll use flatter strokes. I just want to look for pretty consistent transition of the lighter to the darker as it gets down in this valley. It's okay if there's patches of light. That's actually going to look good, having lighter splotches, but overall it has kind of a uniform transition there. You know, it's fun restricting yourself to a large brush when you paint a picture because it makes you get stuff done. You settle for what you're able to do on details, and then the progress is the fun part. Since this is a dark, deep spot, I'm going to start with the dark color and just add little bits of the light. Little faces of waves popping through. And just like I did when I was doing lots of detail and doing a more refined picture, I can connect them where they're close together, leave them separate where they're not close together. Trying to soften the edges here in the foreground. Probably more than anywhere else, it's more important to have soft edges on my waves. It's always fun to put little things popping off the edge of the picture so that you imagine what might be beyond the border of the picture. All my favorite pictures have that, you know, something incomplete coming into the picture so that it looks like more exists than just the frame. So all this in here is the dark backside of the wave. So this will be bright. And all this area, right in here, up in here, and then up in here, under this face, all the way over to here. See, this is all one big dark shape right there. Yeah, and since I'm using this loose technique, I might as well just fill it in with the dark color. I think that'll do just fine. See, this is a real soft edge where I just blur it all together, but I still want it to look rounded. So I just tried to do kind of a gradual change from the dark to light along a curved area. This one's smaller, and that's where I want it to look like this is a little mound of water curving back over the edge there. If I was doing real fine detail, I know what the shapes are of the waves, and because of that, I feel out my comfort level with how much to distort that. You know, you can see that I'm not connecting these all just like I did in the earlier pictures, but I'm keeping an eye on it whether or not it still gives the impression of that pattern. So still the knowledge of that pattern is helping me along my way. This is a giant wave. This is all just a big shadow. It's going to have reflection on it, so it's not going to be so dark on the finished picture, but I'm not going to have that green light color coming through it. Not here. These are distant and these are going to be real little, so maybe I'll just kind of throw it together real quick and see how it turns out. I'll just add some white to this background. Just pure white, just to lighten it as it gets further away, and everything is getting closer and closer to the sky color. And I have this kind of light color here, so rather than add the light blue, this already has tons of blue in it. I think I can get away with just putting white. Just trying to distribute these colors, make it a real smooth transition. And I'm trying to get rid of any shapes that look big back here, because this is distant. That looks cool. I kind of like that, not making a flat horizon. Makes these waves look huge. I'm experimenting with different brush stroke patterns. Now for the wet on dry technique. I'm going to be putting reflection all over these waves. The color I'm going to use for that is the lighter sky color. Or I could use the darker sky color, whatever. I just need a lighter color that represents the sky reflecting on these waves. But I'm going to add blue to it, because if I just take this color and put it on this real bold blue, it's going to end up just looking like some shade of white. You can see when I put it on there, it doesn't look very blue at all. So if I just add some blue to it, I just think it's going to make my waves look a little bit more dramatic, striking, you know. I like the bolder colors. So, just for effect, I'm going to add more blue and plenty of water to this so that it smears along the surface really easily. We need to put a guy in here. Put some kind of a, yeah, that'll be cool. No, I'll put some distortion in there. Just barely darker than the rest of this wave here. We'll get just the right darkness here, so it just barely looks like a shadow of a big dragon in this wave. Oh yeah. It's cool. I'm gonna put a little bit of highlight on him too. He's gonna just disappear for the most part. I don't know what that thing would be, but it's pretty fun to just have a big beast in the waves. Okay, now I'll start putting these little tiny reflection waves in here. I want to keep them small because I want the waves to look real big. So within every dark area, I'll do a lot of different, a lot of little wave shapes. wonder what it'd be like if I feathered this with the dry brush. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I don't know if I can keep that up for the whole picture, but nice soft look though. I got to keep my brush nice and wet to do this technique though. Notice that I'm not doing the usual smile shapes where I do the real skinny lines with the brush. I'm holding the brush down and doing it kind of like I did the rest of the picture, where I get a little bit more of a diamond shape. Now I'm just real loosely following the darker colors that are in there. Not trying to stick to them real exactly, because that'll just be a headache. Drive myself crazy trying to do it exactly. You know, and I think holding the brush like this instead of doing just a bunch of these can make a lot of interesting shapes with the combinations of them stuck together, you know. And we'll see what the difference is. This is a good spot for a bright area. It's kind of fun using that dry brush like that. Maybe I don't want to go too crazy putting bright spots right up there. Maybe I want to get less and less, smaller and smaller little patches of light here. That's a real difference with sea waves versus waves on smaller bodies of water, because in sea waves you just have every angle on every wave. And because of that, anything bright in the sky can be reflecting off every single area in the water. But I want to do it in smaller percentages where there's a big object like this over it. So I think I'll do that. This one I want it to look like a nice deep little valley. So I'll make a skinny little strip that's nice and bright so that it suggests a real sharp turn toward the sky. So you know, this is the edge of my wave. So that sharp angle right there is going to catch a lot of light. And if I need to come back on the spots I want to be brighter, I will. Because I'm feathering them out right now with this big brush, and it's making them not quite as bright. Not even looking where I'm putting these here, you know, just scattering them over the dark area, feathering it out. I kind of like the loose look of it. It adds a kind of motion to the water when things look kind of messy and streaky. You know, when I'm working up in this little tiny area, I'm still thinking about where waves are. I'll start by just putting these little shapes anywhere, but then the second I feel like I'm on the edge of a wave, then I remember that pattern that it needs to have. The reflection brightens as it approaches those high points. You can really throw off the perspective of this shape by making the overall angle of these not match. See, so as I do them, I'm going to travel in curves with the wave just to make sure I stay with that overall angle. See, when I get up here in this foreground area and I want it to be a lot lighter, more subtle, I just, you know, mix some water on this table, on any, you know, it could be on any kind of little palette you can find, but it's just very watery. And then it also helps to have a rag handy to dab out an excessive amount, so that this really is mostly water with just a little bit of that paint in it to pigment it. And that's enough to leave these light colored patterns on the picture. You know, it doesn't take much at all. Now I'm going to do some sea foam in here. I think that'll be a really nice addition to this raging sea. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use pure white. So I have a gallon of that right here. This is Bear. It's just, I just like it because of how white it is. It's actually very annoying to use for murals because it dries really fast and skins over real bad. It's not that great, but it's really white and I like the brightness. So I'm going to take that and mix it with my dark color from my sky up there. So you remember the real dark bluish color I made by mixing black, blue, red, and some white to make it more gray. I'm going to use that for the shadow color on the seafoam because seafoam is very much like clouds. It's water that is letting light come through it. And so the shadows and the light look very similar for the same reason that the clouds look the way they do. The white foam that you see on the water happens when water crashes into itself, pulling air pockets down with it. Millions of them. Little tiny bubbles making this foam that rises up on the surface. And so as it rises out of that, the water comes up and pushes out. And so what you have is somewhat circle, oval shapes of negative space of water that push the foam apart. So the strands of foam you see on the water are always a result of the negative space between those circles. Or you could say the circles are the negative space between the foam. But of course they're not perfect circles. They just tend to be in patterns that start from the middle and push out. So that means that my foam could be made by doing little geometric shapes, triangles and squares. Let's say a triangle like this, and I'll scrunch my triangle this way. And then I'll make the sides of my little geometric shape concaved. So I'll take the sides and curve them in toward the middle of my shape, like this. And then I'll add some random little squiggles or something to the end so that it's not so perfectly geometric, you know. Okay, now I'm going to do a few of those, and I just want to make sure that I keep making it so that they are little geometric shapes with concave sides. Look, I'll attach another one to this, make this a little mini one that attaches. You see? Let's make this one more of a rectangle. Look, make a rectangle here, but then I'll make the sides a little bit concaved. I'll put the strands coming out. Now, once I learn a pattern, I have to understand that it's never a perfectly consistent. It's just something that occurs enough and is frequent enough that it creates the overall look of things. So let's make some more. Make one in here. So you see I'm working around this larger shape. This is going to end up being, you're going to end up, without trying, making somewhat oval or circular shapes in the middle, as long as you just keep making these kinds of shapes. So maybe make one in here. Once I'm comfortable with this, I'll just start making shapes with concaved sides. So I'm going to start just by making a whole bunch of those shapes, and then I'll fine tune it after I get some things in place. I'll decide where to make it bigger, where to make more of the white, where to make less of it. But I need to give myself something to look at first. So in here, I like the way this looks, I like the way that looks. We'll bring those together. A little bit in here. So I don't want to make real big traveling lines that are solid with this foam. At least not a lot. You know, I think that's been what I did in the past that caused it to look not as natural as I wanted. I couldn't figure out why it was looking so artificial. It wasn't looking like that natural seafoam, the way it stretches across the surface. And I really think that is why. This looks like a good place to make it heavier, make more of it. So here maybe there's just little air bubbles starting to push it apart. So I'm going to make more closed circles in there. See those little ovals I made? You know, the wave breaks, it crashes, it plunges down into the water, and then behind that wave is where you see it. The wave comes through, like if this big wave passed, then you look behind it, and then all that foam that it pushed down into the water starts rising up behind it, and all of the air bubbles come up and push that foam apart. And then what's left are those strands in between all of those round kind of patterns where the water current rising up is pushing the foam apart. Now if I really scrunch my shapes, you know, on these areas, on what would be like the back side of the wave going down, I scrunch the shapes there, I open up the shapes on the faces. That also is really going to help with the three-dimensional look of my waves. Now I can see some shapes starting to form here. And the foam, you know, just like putting snow on mountains, putting the foam on the water is really helping to add some three-dimensional shape to this, and I'm really liking that. So I'm gonna run with what I'm seeing. You know, I'm seeing, you know, kind of an edge of a wave coming up here. You know, I have just the right color for the shadow, and I already made that color when I did the sky. So now I can just take advantage of that and use the same concept on this foam. I'm just gonna put bigger shapes like this in the foreground to add some cool perspective to my picture. Extend the corners out, give a little bit of a squiggle to them so that it creates concave sides. There we go. That's the kind of shapes I'm looking for. It's like stretching a piece of gum till it breaks. See, when you see me coming back over areas that I've already done, I'm not fixing anything, I'm just gradually building it up to the amount. You know, I always like to start with a little bit, look at it, and see if it makes me imagine anything further. You know, I just run with my imagination. This wave is on such massive scale that I'm not going to put a whole lot of breaking coming over this water. I'm going to, for the most part, just put the white water on top of this one. Just put it up in here. And all I'm doing is just starting to give myself some shapes that look like they're shooting out a little bit. Okay, then I'll get the shadow color and start going with the shape of the wave now. So I'm trying to follow the curve with my brush strokes so that it looks consistent. I mean, we're looking up at this wave, so we're seeing the bottom of all the white water. This isn't like when you're watching it roll in from the beach and it's hanging over and all you see is a thin shadow. This is like we're looking up at the bottom edge of this. So this is the shadow color of the sky that I'm transitioning into this green wave, and then I'll use the white to make this foam crashing out. So I'm going to put my wave color in here, which is these two. And you know, if it's drying fast, then I can not worry about this bottom area. I can match that later. I'm going to worry about this where I've got to do the blending. Then I'll get my shadow, sky shadow color right here, blend that in. Then the white. See, my perspective is starting to shift now. Ooh, I like the way that looks right there. I'm just going to leave that kind of hanging over a little bit. So see, the further I get this way, the more I'll arc them like that, but the closer I am this way, the more I'll keep them straight up and down. And I'm going to make this white cap smaller and smaller as it comes back here because this is distant. Just try to get a nice blend here. It's kind of fun to leave it a little bit streaky so that it looks like heavier and thinner areas of the water. Make it look real intimidating up here. It's like it's just towering over me. I like the way that vertical blending looks. Looks like it's in motion, just moving fast, you know. Big, merciless tidal wave. I love it. I want to add some misty whitewater spray blasting off this. Just get pure white. Something that can really help this too is to make the surface moist, and even after that water dries, it'll still cool down the surface and make the paint more workable for a few more seconds. It'll buy me a little bit of blending time. Alright, so watch this. I can just come in here and just massage the end of this. Now I think that's too much. That's probably more than I wanted. But look how cool that is. Then I'll take this dry brush that I've been using. Make all that white mist on there. I use this technique all the time doing clouds too. It's kind of a wax on, wax off technique. See, the back end of my brush never touches the paint because that's that clean half of the end of that brush is what is feathering it as I go. So the technique is to use just that one half. So, you know, I made a big mess right here, but it's just water-based paint. It's not a big deal. I have a very vertical looking wall right here. It looks kind of flat. It looks like this wave maybe is kind of straight up where I would like it better if it had a nice rounded feel to it. So it's not that hard to just come in and just go right over the top of what's there with some more rounded patterns. So on my wave patterns, I'll just go like this, you know, more rounded patterns. This is kind of far away here, so those are probably bigger than I want them to be. Get my dry brush out that I was feathering things with. I'm looking for natural lines already in it that seem incomplete and just trying to complete those. You know, like if I see because the lines are what's going to create the shape. And your mind makes lines out of shapes. So if I see something coming down this way that seems a little incomplete, I'll connect it together. You know, put one here, right here, so that then this area has an overall curve to it that maybe it didn't have as well before. That would cause this wave to have a better shape to it. And you know, shape matters a lot with water. Painting water, so much of our perception of water is seeing a certain set of familiar shapes. It's always amazing to me how there's so much information that your mind puts together that you really don't even know it's putting together in order to have you understand where you are, what you're doing, your environment, to know what you're seeing. These waves are lighting up from something, and it's not from this dark sky. So what I'm thinking is put lightning up here. I'll just start making it's just this half of the lightning bolt that I'm making. Okay, so I'm going to blend this with this brush, and as the paint is starting to dry out, I'm just going to keep going over it till it feathers out real nice, making a nice jagged edge on this. But this is just the glow pattern around the lightning, so I'm not going to worry too much. Let's get a little bit, see if we can blend this out some. You know what, if it's raining, then it would kind of interfere with that glow, so I'll just put all of my blending this way. It'll look like lightning in the rain now. All right, then it's going to come over here, go right down behind this wave. This got kind of weak in here. Let's see if it'll let me put more on without pulling it off and ruining it. Yeah, that worked. All I did was put water on this brush. That's all I did. Just coming back and doing the other side of this glow by smearing this fresh paint. I'm just agitating it enough to lift it off and blend it again. Let's see See how that works out. Right through this middle where I have where the two sides are meeting up, that's right where I'm going to put the bolt and cover over all the areas that don't look like a nice smooth natural glow. I don't want to just real quick make a real straight smooth lightning bolt. I want it to have lots of these jagged little turns. Pretty much always use that long point of this brush for detail work. As long as I maintain the exact same distance from the picture, it'll give me the same width on the line. And I think that's the tricky part is maintaining that distance. All right, all I'm doing now is taking the bright green, the same green I did this wave with, and adding white to it. Now, water changes the direction of light when it transitions. So if this light comes through this backside of this wave, it's gonna get sent downward, and then exiting the wave, boom, it's gonna get sent back. This is a cool idea that I've never done, so I gotta do this. Dude, this is lightning. This needs more of that. This needs to be like lit up here. I want this to be bright. This whole area is glowing. This is gonna be cool. Now the lightning bolt. See, this white water here has just got such a glow on it from that lightning. Let's just use my phthalo green tint here. Okay, I'm just gonna mix that with white. Watch. Takes the tiniest amount. Look how bright that color is. That'll be great for this brightest part. Just using the very tip of this brush. Boy, this monster's getting zapped. It's okay, because he likes it. Now I can go even further on the detail, and I can add little tiny accents, you know, where maybe little tiny ripples in the waves are reflecting the lightning, or just a bright spot in the sky. Who knows? Just areas where the angle is facing more toward the sky or facing a brighter part. Notice how I'm kind of keeping them all at this angle right here so that it looks like they're facing right toward it. Look how much reflective area is right at the peak of this wave. That's exactly what I'm trying to stay away from. I want to make the reflection areas thinner and thinner as they approach any high points in the water. So this, even though it doesn't look bad in my picture, this picture still looks good, this still isn't the best. It could be improved. So I'm going to just take that wave and get this paint off of here. You see, and I'll just bring the face of this wave up all the way into that. So now it does cause it to be, now it does cause the reflection area to get skinnier as it approaches this peak, and then I'll just make this a real bright spot in the water. And then this one here, same thing. You know, that one could also be better. This looks like I'm looking down at it right now, which isn't bad, but I can make this one more consistent with that same rule if I wanted to. I'm not saying it needs to be done, but where's my dark color? Let's get the dark color for the water. This was the dark color I used on this water, and I can take that, and even though I might really love the way that looks, I can just chop off the top of that. If I got too much reflection area right at the peak of a wave, then it's just more of the same. You know, I put these little tips on these waves and cut off the edge of that reflection to make them look like they have better depth. So now I just want to try to bring that reflection color back in. Okay, I think it needs a ship. I'm thinking that we're going to put a ship right down in here. You know, like, one thing I've learned in painting is accuracy does not matter nearly as much as believability. Let's put some like Viking kind of horns up on this thing. So if I just make this boat look cool, it doesn't matter if it would actually float. Some kind of little decorative doodad on this thing. You can see why I like these brushes again. You can get very sharp lines. Get the sail all tied up on it. Needs a little baskets at the top. You know, I would not want to be up there. So you got to have these baskets, because where's the guy going to stand when he's, you know, pulling those ropes up top, anchoring that sail? I have no idea what I'm doing with these ropes. Just making too many of them to even keep track of. I'm going to get out that bright turquoise color. That's the dark one that I used on that big wave. I'm going to make a wake behind this boat. See if I can make some white water, and you know, it always kind of crosses over and overlaps itself in the middle behind the boat. Just make some bright spots in that wave that are like foam underneath the water. We'll make a little bit going right over the top of Mr. Dragon right here. Okay, now the foam on the surface. Fun part. I'm mixing lots of that shadow color in with this white. Alright, now let's get some pure white. Put some highlights here. Make this brighter where it's pointing more straight up. Now I'll tell you what I'm going to do to finish off this picture. There's a few things that I just think will make the composition more interesting, and for one, I'm probably going to darken this white water a little bit, make it look a little more shadowed overall, because it is on the side of this wave, and I think that it's a little bit bright in comparison with the lightning and all that. I think this will look better in the picture if I darken it down so that this is more of the brightest part of the picture. I'll use more of my dry brush technique that I used with the lightning, with the glow, with the wave, to add more clouds down here getting lit up by the lightning, and maybe some dark areas too to enhance the effect of this being the bright spot. I'll darken these areas of the sky. I don't like how everything in this picture is like, you know, like you're going down a half pipe and this wave swoops up. I think this wave is really what puts it over the top in that way. So I'm gonna, as much as I love the look of this catching the light, I don't think it's good for the layout of the picture. So I'm gonna paint over this and do more of the same kind of waves, just different shapes, and hopefully do something less swoopy. Maybe something that goes a little bit more with the downward slope of the overall shape of this water. I think I'm gonna put another big wave on the horizon somewhere, so that it's not just this very plain straight horizon. I'll put more of these little white tips that I have on the waves on these waves that are out here. Just detail them out a little bit more, maybe more of these guys. And then I'll put little highlights on the boat, on the railing, bright highlights where the light from the lightning is lighting up the shape of it. You know, any other little things that come to me as I'm going, I'll do that. But I think those are the important things that I'm going to try to hit real fast so that I can call this picture finished. Okay, I want to show you one last thing. Let's say that this is breaking right here, and so I'm going to put my underwater color. So these are my underwater colors that I put in, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to paint over this. I'm saying it's coming down this way, and I'm going to add a little bit of my dark color. There's some dark color under the water here. The wave has depth to it, and as it curls around, it gets thinner as it curls there on the top. Well, I added a little too much water to that. And the underside of that water that's curling over reflects light, probably even more so than the top side. So I can take my reflection color, that was the wrong color I just dipped in. I'll just use pure white. And I'll start not from the top of it, but from down here. Because this is where that under layer, I don't know what you call it, that underside of the water is curling up and catching the reflection of the sky. So then the brightest part of it is at the top of that area. This is my reflection color, this light blue. So this is actually a darker color than this reflection. this is where I'll make this reflection. And, you know, maybe it helps if I let this all dry first, but I'm just gonna just put it all together. Ooh, that looks nice. And then my foam color, I'm just using the same colors I used up in my sky for foam. It's crashing down here, so I'll make it piling up, and I'll just make it gradually change. Where was my shadow color? Right here. And then all of this foam here just gradually transitions into this. See, and then it can crash here, and then where the light catches it, I'll make it brighter. So I'll use this bright color and make it piling up here a little bit. These are the same colors for the foam that I use when I'm painting clouds. This would be the cloud shadow color. It's just a blue, a red, and a white with a little bit of black in it. And I don't always use the black when I'm doing clouds, but in the stormy scene I did use a little black. Then the light color is just blue and white and a little bit of red. And I can use pure white also, but this I want to be in the shadows a little bit. So this still has some of the blue and red, but I can also, here I'll just put some of my pure white on there. Where did that go? Right here. Pure white makes real nice highlights. Then I can make that darker foam color with the shadow color and the light color mixed together. And then I can curl it underneath this to really give it dimension, to give it shape, you know. See, so it has that nice curled shape, and then, you know, I can put a shadow under the, where it's crashing right here. All kinds of shadows and highlights when you're doing foam in clouds, things like that. You know, they're so similar. Make some of this foam coming up here. Probably make some blocking out this area, because I need to connect it with this up here. I want it to look like one big piece of water just blasting off the edge here. I can make these same foam patterns strung across the top of this to finish it off. So I'll make some strings of it, following the path here like it got pulled down real fast and stretched way out. Trick to making this foam look natural, it's making it look like there's a bunch of shapes in the middle of it pushing it apart, leaving strands that are getting pulled apart just like polyester filling. I'm being more conscious of the negative space of the blue water than I am of the white foam that I'm painting. It's a storm. Could be anything. Let's just put a bunch of white water and call it a splash.